Good evening. I'd like to call the July 17th, 2012 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Coombs. Mayor Coombs, are you here?
Okay, present.
Council members Bagley.
Here.
Finley.
Here.
Levison.
Here.
Samori.
Here.
Santos.
Here.
Witt.
Here.
Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
All right, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at the first public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing items this evening or at the final call, public invited to be heard on any item at the end of the meeting. I guess there's any minutes we need to approve. No minutes. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions or submissions of documents?
Mayor Coombs, supplemental materials were sent out on all three items Friday via email and on the web, and then Eugene May, our city attorney, has some additional information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Eugene May, City Attorney. There are two submission of documents that are on your dais. One, both for general business, item 11A regarding the top agreements. The first is master contract red line, substituting page 109 of your supplemental packet. And then we have substitution page for the operator's agreement, which is page 127 of your supplemental packet, and staff will address those items at the time of the agenda item. Further, given what looks like in the crowd, a lot of people who are here to comment on the oil and gas issues, I'd suggest council consider removing the tabled regulations at this time for the purpose of reopening the public hearing and assuring the public that there will be an opportunity for their input on both the regs and the top operating agreements. And in that way, we'll be able to reserve the public invited to be heard time for those members of the public who want to comment on non-gas issues. It would really help separate those.
All right. All right, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Is there a report from the city manager?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
All right.
Mayor Coombs, the first item on the agenda is a draft XL gas franchise agreement. There was a pre-recorded staff presentation on that. Jim Golden is here to answer questions and perhaps give a presentation.
Mayor Coombs, Member of Council, I'm Jim Golden, Director of Finance Support Services. And for this item tonight, we have a number of folks here in the audience. Nick Wolfram, the Engineering Service Manager, who also worked with me on that pre-recorded presentation that you viewed. And we also have Jeff Friedland from the City Attorney's Office and our special counsel on this project, Ken Fellman. And there are a couple of members of employees from Excel who are also in the audience that worked on the negotiation of this franchise agreement. We have, since we pre-recorded the presentation, most of the information is also in the communication. Actually only here tonight to answer questions and get some direction from the council regarding moving forward on the draft franchise agreement. So with that, I'll ask if you have questions.
I guess I have a question. In this negotiations, did we ever address, it seemed like a couple months ago, we had a situation where a construction project was delayed by Xcel Energy for a couple weeks that actually cost us a $50,000 charge, if I'm correct. And did we consider that in our negotiation position?
Mayor Coombs is going to have Nick respond to that.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council. Nick Wolfram, the Engineering Services Manager. Yes, actually, that was one of the items we discussed, and one of the items that's identified in here is a requirement for coordination of work. There are clauses. There is a clause in the agreement that talks about claims if there are claims because of lost work. I think probably most importantly, one of the things that's occurred out of this is working to establish improved working relationships. We actually had a separate staff meeting with LPC staff, Public Works staff, XL staff, and some other utility staff last week, just to try and talk about upcoming projects and how do we better coordinate some of those things and do that. I will say also that we expressed our concerns over what happened in the first phase of the alleyscape in the 400 block. Worked through those issues, and the work has gone substantially better in the 500 block. So we've seen improvement on behalf of XL and their contractor and performance on that in coordination with us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions? I guess no one else has any questions, so must be happy with it. So, Councilmember Santos.
Jim, do you have something else? Thank you, Mayor. Well, I guess you're looking for direction. Right. So Mayor, I would move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance approving the draft franchise agreement as written and a resolution submitting the franchise to the electors at the November 2012 election.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your next item are ordinances on second reading and public hearings.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, we got to do first call. Yep. So I don't. Yeah, I don't see a sheet for first call. I see the ordinance sheet. All right.
So how about those Broncos?
How about that rhythm on the river event this weekend?
Very nice. We're killing time. We can talk about budgets.
Oh, I missed that.
Late.
All right, first person on the list is Paul Tiger. Could you please come down and state your name and address for the record? That will be followed by Kimberly Gibbs. Paul? All right, how about Kimberly Gibbs?
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of the council. My name is Kim Gibbs, and I live at 7468 Mount Sherman Road in Gun Barrel. I'd like to speak to you about transparency in government. A couple of months ago, the Longmont Airport Facebook site posted a message about mile-high skydiving, sending their critics bumper stickers reading, "I love airplane noise." This website is unofficial, of course, meaning that the content is not managed by city staff. I was curious to know who's behind the proverbial curtain, because that and other content there would seem inappropriate if it came from a city official. Tim Barth, the airport manager, said that he didn't know who manages the site, but he was certain that it was no one connected with the city. As it turns out, Chris Rodriguez manages that site. On May 10th, he wrote that members of Quiet Skies had demanded the website be deleted along with another airport site. As the leader of Quiet Skies, I can assure you that is an outright lie. What could be his motivation for making this claim? For the record, the mile-high jump planes are creating a very real public noise nuisance. But with ethical leadership, there can be peace between the airport and the local community. So who is Chris Rodriguez? You may recall that his recent editorial, or you may recall his recent editorial criticizing the anti-fracking petition that's being circulated. He's a blogger and activist who manages Longmont Politics website, where he refers to the lefty loonies. On his Lightning Rod blog, he encouraged harassment of the pitchfork vigilantes, including myself, who dared to complain about the jump plane noise. But more importantly, Chris Rodriguez serves as the chairman of the Longmont Airport Advisory Board. That board meets right here in these chambers, and he sits right there where the mayor sits, I think. As a quasi-public official, he holds an influential position over airport policies that affect the community. He has every right as an individual to advocate for special interests and say whatever he believes, no matter how disconnected from reality. But Chris Rodriguez has no business serving on the Airport Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, no applause, please. Jeff Thompson, followed by Strider Benston.
Jeff Thompson, 1616 Sumner Street. Mayor Coombs, can I just as tactfully and delicately as I possibly can suggest that our city attorney, Eugene May, read our city charter and read our city ordinances? He's been our city attorney for over a year now, and I think that would be a good idea. Ordinances in this city are supposed to only cover one subject, Mr. May. Therefore, the hearing that is required before the ordinance is passed can only cover one subject, not two subjects. Not this bizarre agreement with Top Oil and the equally bizarre oil and gas regulation ordinance. You know, in 2009, I dropped out of the mayoral race because I was afraid I might take votes away from Roger Lang and help Brian Baum get elected. And that's because I thought Brian Baum would run the city like a thug and just run right over people. And it turns out that I was right about that. But that's also the way you're running things. We only had a week's notice. You were negotiating that agreement with Top Operating for 90 days, and nobody was told that you were negotiating that agreement. Then you sprung it on us
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to reply at all, Eugene? All right. Yeah.
I didn't say he was a thug. I said he was operating like a thug.
Oh, and the difference is?
If you can't figure out that difference, you're not intelligent.
Oh. Okay. I got thick skin. I'll go ahead and listen for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
You negotiated in secret, negotiated that Top Operating agreement in secret executive sessions, and it's clearly you were negotiating also our ordinance at the same time. Behind our backs. You said you were going to be a mayor for all the people, and you led the council, and you participated in the negotiation of this Top Operating agreement behind our backs. So when you said you were going to be a mayor for all the people, you lied. It really says, you know, you just plain lied about that. And I think a lot of people would have voted for Brian Baum if they had known you were lying about that. It's just incredible what you've done here. And I would like a ruling on that about trying to combine the hearings, because this is so there's so much to be considered, so much that the public needs to be able to give you an input on. You're actually going to have a hearing and just give us 3 minutes on both subjects? That's sleazy.
Strider Benston? Okay.
Greetings, Mayor Coombs, City Council, and Strider Benston, 951 West 17th Avenue. I'd like to mention a couple of things. Ms. Gibbs mentioned transparency in government. That would really be interesting. It might behoove us to know one thing. There's one individual who sponsored a presidential candidate personally by himself to the tune of $23 million cash. Man named Sheldon Edelman. I wonder how he got this cash. Well, he owned a gambling casino in Las Vegas. And then he saw that China, communist China, only allowed gambling in one place, in Macau. So he got a lot of money and borrowed a lot of money and went over and built a big gambling hall in Macau. Everyone in China who wants to gamble has to go to Macau. And then he bribed the public officials and got many, many more billions. And he is now subject possibly to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. But now he's given $100 million to Mitt Romney after already having given $23 million to to Newt Gingrich. Put in $5 million for Cantor in Virginia. What's he got to do with Virginia? Well, he wants the laws. He wants to own the law. And that's how Citizens United has created our government. If you have 100,000, a million people give $25, $23, that equals Sheldon Edelman just gave to Mitt Romney. You call this a democracy? I'd like to mention a couple of Supreme Court decisions. Charles River Bridge, Chief Justice Taney in 1837 said, the rights of property must, where necessary, be subordinated to the needs of the community. This is in a Supreme Court decision that's never been overturned. He declared that for a charter to operate as a monopoly must be construed narrowly to preserve the rights of the community. Where the rights of private property conflict with those of the community, the latter must be paramount. The object and end of all government is to promote the happiness and prosperity of the community by which it is established. And it can never be assumed that the government intended to diminish its power of accomplishing the end for which it was created. Let it once be understood that corporations carry implied contracts, then the public improvements and the public safety and health are at the mercy of existing corporations and defeat the right of the community to avail itself of the benefits of scientific progress and their own health and safety. Maybe the point got across. This has been going on for a long time.
Thank you, Strider. Paul Tiger?
Thank you so much, Mayor. Paul Tiger, 452 Dixon. Thank you for letting me come back at the end. I have distributed something here called on approval voting. Those of you who have taken part in Left Hand of Liberty luncheons and dinners are already aware of this. This topic has finally reached somewhat of fruition. there's a bill being drafted for introduction in the 2013 House or Senate session, depending upon who picks it up. It would be applicable to municipalities and home rule. It's actually, as a home rule community, you could use approval voting now. Approval voting, quite simple. Vote for all the candidates that you approve of. Prior to 1922 in this country, we had approval voting. Approval voting is approved by the UN and the U.S. to help developing democracies. In Tajikistan, while they were filling their parliament, they used disapproval voting. Cross off all the people you don't like. True negative elections. Anyway, this is here. I'm going to be talking about it some more, and it's a light subject. You can, if I see you looking down at your cards at your desk while the rest is going on here, I'll know that you're studying my card. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. All right, that's it for public invited to be heard.
Okay, Mayor Coombs, now it's time for second readings. Ordinance 2012-25, a bill for an ordinance amending chapters 1504, 1505, 1507, 1510, and Appendix B of Title 15 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding oil and gas well operations and facilities. Brian Schumacher is here to make a short presentation. Or long.
Pardon. Before you get started, Brian, Gabe's got a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Eugene, we've had our public hearing on this matter, haven't we?
That's correct.
So technically, we don't have to have another public hearing.
That's correct.
So basically what the council has approved to do is have an additional public hearing on the oil and gas regs and those and also regarding the operating agreement with TOP.
That's right.
So in actuality, we've had this public hearing. We don't need to have another one, but we voted 7-0 to allow another one. So to say that we're doing something shady or underhanded, I think is a little disingenuous. We're trying to make sure that those that want to be heard are heard. Thank you. I'm sorry, but we've had public invited to be heard.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I just want to stick up for you, Mayor. And Mayor Baum's not here to defend himself, and you're here, but you didn't defend yourself, so I'm going to stick up for both of you. I don't always agree with either one of you, but I think that, interestingly, I just want to share what I got a phone call this week, and the phone call was from Mayor Coombs and the city attorney, Eugene May, and they notified me saying that they thought that it was appropriate that we had another public hearing. My first thought was, oh, I don't want to go through this again. I didn't want to have a public hearing on this. But it was the mayor that insisted on it. And so we're going to be discussing and talking and debating certain aspects of both these issues. But neither one needed to be discussed in public. But it was your mayor and the city attorney, ironically, they were the first ones to stand up and say, we need to talk about this in public. And so I just wanted to set the record straight. Also, I'm unaware of any backroom deals that occurred with council. As you know, we're torn apart over this issue, quite literally, and there's no backroom deals here. And so, if any backroom deals are going on, it's not on this side of the dais.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Councilman Bagley. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Brian Schumacher with City Economic Development Department. So on May 22nd, at the second reading and public hearing on the draft oil and gas regulations, council voted 4-3 to table consideration of the ordinance, and then subsequently the council voted to extend the moratorium on June 5th to July 31st. Last week, council discussed the draft regulations that were presented by Councilman Bagley and voted last week on the July 10th meeting to bring back the red line version of the regulations for consideration at tonight's meeting. In addition to the modifications that were presented by Councilmember Bagley, as noted in the communication for this evening, as well as the red line version, there are several modifications that staff has presented for council's consideration. If council does approve a version of the ordinance this evening, it will become effective on July 30th, prior to the expiration of the moratorium. So I'm just going to briefly touch upon the few changes that were suggested by staff in terms of recommended revisions to the ordinance. One is related to a ordinance that council approved last week on the 10th. That's the ordinance 2012-42 regarding public and common improvement review and improvement guarantees. As a result of that, some of the section numbers changed under the financial securities and liability insurance sections. So those were revised to reflect the current section numbers in the approved ordinance. Second item is regarding several changes that are related under setbacks, setbacks from structures, setbacks from water bodies. First is that we made sure that there was consistency in referencing the term structures and buildings, so that they were clarified and consistent throughout those sections. Secondarily, the setback standards from occupied or to occupied buildings was maintained to be consistent with council direction that setbacks from residences and other occupied structures such as schools have priority over setbacks from other areas. The second thing that was changed in that section was that setback standards to some of the other areas, such as platted residential lots, parks, sports fields, designated outside activity areas, water bodies, and such, they were revised to allow more flexibility with respect to siting facilities at the city's discretion due to specific locational constraints. Just as an example, there may be some circumstances such as in maintaining the recommended distances to occupied structures, residences, and schools and such, that it may not be feasible to meet all the other recommended setback requirements. And so in those instances, the city would have the discretion to work with an operator to select the preferred location that would work best for the location, even though it might not meet all the other recommended setback requirements. And then, as noted and discussed at last week's meeting, staff has made application to the state regarding several areas for designated outside activity areas, expansion of the current Sandstone Ranch designated outside activity area to include the soccer fields, as well as the Union Reservoir recreation area. If those are approved by the commission and the public hearing is scheduled for August, any oil and gas facilities would still need to meet the setback requirements from the perimeter of the designated outside activity areas for wells and production facilities. And those minimum standards are 350 feet from wellheads and 500 feet from production facilities to designated outside activity areas. And then again, there are several other staff recommended wording changes, but those are fairly minor and they're intended primarily for clarification purposes. We'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have regarding those. So with that, that concludes my brief remarks. And I know that as part of the council's motion last week, that the council wanted to go through the proposed red line changes as recommended and discussed last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I guess we need a motion to consider the red line version as a substitute. So, all right, let's vote on that. Okay, that passes 7-0. So basically, we're going to consider the substitute red line as the baseline that we're going to negotiate from. So I will open a public hearing on this item, and we have, I guess we'll start with Charles. Okay. State your address, please.
3400 Mountain View Avenue, and I'm running for senator in this district, 17, for Colorado. I looked over the fracking, and it's a very interesting word. It's very negative sounding. But I'm finding a reverse situation here, where the people who want fracking stopped also want higher prices for oil and gas. We have people who are suffering in this economic crisis at the moment, and they don't want more oil and gas. Well, there's a residual effect to that also. The oil companies and gas companies can now charge more because there's less of it in the area, which is a point that we should think about. Also, for the council, please don't get into a pissing match with the state. Thank you very much.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Eugene.
So Mayor and City Council, just to address the comment earlier about the proprietariness of combining these hearings, the charter is very clear that the ordinances shall be confined to one subject. By ordinance, they're referring to the written document, and that's Charter Section 4.1. Later down in Charter Section 4.5, the charter says a hearing shall be held before final action on any ordinance. There is no specific language confining it to a single subject, and the city's past practice and policy has been to combine public hearings on matters of similar subject. We often do it in the land use context, and that's what we're doing here.
Thank you, Eugene. Next up is Michael Kikoli.
Hi there, I'm Mike Kikoli from 420 North Parkside Drive in Longmont. Good evening, Mayor Combs and City Council. I'm very happy to live here in Longmont, Colorado. The city is looking very good as usual. The city services are operating smoothly and professionally. Everything's designed well and very well maintained. There's plenty of entertainment and culture here, and everybody seems to be happy and safe. There were some serious wildfires throughout the state recently, but thanks to the careful attention of everyone here and the city employees and the public, no homes were lost and no one died. During the heat wave, the electricity and air conditioning was not interrupted, and despite the dry spell here, there's still enough water, and all of this is due to the fact that Longmont is governed and operated with broad-minded, forward-thinking, humanitarian intelligence. You've done well, and I think you're winning this game. So the future looks bright. Thank you, Longmont. As issues arise, I'm sure that they will be resolved with the same high level of performance and finesse. So regarding Longmont's oil and gas policy, I'd like to suggest a few things. If a ban on hydraulic fracturing succeeds, we won't have to think about all of this. But in the meantime, we all have an interest in making sure that oil and gas drilling activities here use the most effective performance technologies and practices. The best practices in exploration, drilling, casing, and cementing to prevent leakage of fracking chemicals below the ground. I suggest that we require proof of a successful cement bond log using ultrasonic imaging tools and software. To minimize emission from these wells into the atmosphere, I suggest that we require green completion procedures which will capture as much as 90% of the gases which are otherwise flared or burned and generate CO2 and smog. To minimize the impact of these activities on some of my neighbors here in Longmont, I suggest we increase the setbacks to the distances that everyone is more comfortable with. And to pay for the resulting litigation, I suggest that the city of Longmont immediately arranges to begin generating revenue on its own property where it owns mineral rights. Install some wells not too close to anything, using the greenest, cleanest technology and crews available. This will be a model for other well installations to follow. And,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to remind people to speak directly into the mic, adjust the mic to your. Next, we have, is there a representative from Top Operating that wants to speak? Okay. Okay. Victoria Palmer, followed by Joan Peck.
Hi. I have two statements. One is written by me.
Need your address.
Oh, yeah, we need your address.
Victoria Palmer. And my address?
Yes.
200 Cardinal Way, Unit C. So this first statement is written by me. I have lived here in Longmont my entire life. We have a nice, clean, safe community. That's why people choose to live here. For the first time, I will now question using the bike paths I so enjoy or allowing my daughter to swim at the Union Reservoir for concern of contaminated water and polluted air. The City Council was elected by us to speak for us and represent us, yet they are making such a decision without us while knowing there is strong opposition and broad effort among our citizens to bring this issue to a vote of the people. Please do not undermine the thousands of people who have signed this petition. Please let us vote. And then this other statement was written by Don Colson, and he couldn't be here, so I'm reading it on his behalf. I have read this morning's Times call report on the proposed contract with Top Drilling, and am appalled that our elected representatives would ever consider signing such a deal at this time. You know full well that thousands of your constituents have signed the petition to ban fracking in Longmont, and that within a short period it will in all likelihood be approved for next November's election. Despite this knowledge, it appears that you will go ahead with approval, essentially telling your constituents to go to hell. Months ago, you had the opportunity to play an extended moratorium on any activity by Top. Weeks ago, you had an opportunity to ratify new drilling regulations, which despite this morning's glowing report, would have eliminated several advantages to Top, which appear now to instead be included in the contract with Top. A few weeks ago, you were made aware of the petition drive, and at that point could have extended the moratorium another 9 or 10 months until ballots were cast by all citizens. You have had every opportunity to take bold action and display leadership, but instead, with the singular opposition from Councilmember Liebenson, you told your constituents to go to hell, then jumped into bed with the oil and gas industry. Well, what goes around comes around, and you can count on your actions in this fracking issue to play a huge role in your eventual run for re-election. You will discover that those thousands who signed the petition to ban fracking have long memories in time. We shall see just who goes where. Sincerely, Don Colson. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Peck, followed by Mark White.
Hello, my name is Joan Peck, 1935 Spruce Avenue in Longmont. I read in the rules and regulations and the new drilling standards as reported by the Times Call, and I think they're a sellout to our city and residents. There are many parts of the rules and regulations that are unacceptable. In one part of the rules, it stated that Top Operating Company will keep its wells away from homes. However, in another part, if the regulations are adopted, the ban on drilling in residential areas can be lifted by an exception granted by the city. The word exception to me is a loophole. These two statements are contradictory. No drilling in residential areas means no drilling in residential areas. No loopholes. The exception loophole, in my opinion, is about money only. Who has it and who will benefit from it, whether that be in future campaign financing or only across-the-table buyouts. But the part that really gives me no trust in the City Council is the paragraph that reads there will be no lawsuits against the city based on the new drilling rules. However, this doesn't apply if the city amends its laws in a manner that effectively prevents or prohibits the company from engaging in oil and gas operations. It's my opinion that this paragraph specifically applies to the petition drive we're having to ban fracking within the city limits of Longmont. Basically, what top operating and city council are doing is taking away our First Amendment rights to petition our government. And just to remind you, the First Amendment says that we have the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's really kind of a farce to put that in there. We're going into a contract with a corporation or industry saying that if the residents of the city express their right to petition the government and vote on that decision, the gas and oil industry will sue us. This is a federal constitutional right, and it's also a constitutional right by the state. So if we petition the government, vote on it, and passes, the gas and oil industry is going to sue us. That doesn't seem like that can hold up in a court. And do you actually think does TOP think it's going to stop petitioning our government to change the charter amendment of the city to ensure our constitutional rights to clean water, air, and soil because we're being threatened? I invite everyone who hasn't signed the petition to get the initiative to ban fracking within the city limits to come to Canmoto Park Thursday night, July 19th between 7 and 9. You can sign it there. Do not let this council and this industry take away your constitutional right to petition your government. Thank you.
Mark White, followed by Jerry Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Mark White, 1917 Garden Wall Way. I was here when the representatives from COGCC did their dog and pony show here. During that, in his presentation, he admitted that drilling is an industrial activity. Per the zoning laws of this city, industrial activities do not take place in residential areas, do not take place on golf courses. I think I made my point. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Jerry Vaughn. Just come down and state your name and address.
Jerry Vaughn, 1921 Ashford Circle. I've lived here for over 40 years. And let's see, it was about, the population was 21,000 when I came here. And I've seen many changes and decisions made to create the kind of city that we have today. And all the decisions and the choices that were made were, some of them were very critical ones and important ones. And some of them were just day-by-day, daily routines that we have to choose. But the decision that you are considering right now with fracking is a very critical one, I think, as far as the health and safety of Longmont. And for a city council member to really look at your prime responsibilities, your significant responsibility to represent all of Longmont. That's your commitment. Your commitment is not to you, not to the oil and gas companies, not to the profit and loss, not to the businesses, but to all of the people of Longmont. That's your prime responsibility. And I would hope that you have exhausted all the sources that you could look to determine and to discover what does Longmont really feel about this, rather than give equal choice to all the other affectations to that choice. I really hope that you can do this with a clear conscience, because if you can't, you're going to have to live with it, and the rest of us are too. The health and safety of Longmont is primary, isn't it? Thank you.
Teresa Foster, followed by Marilyn Belchinsky.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Teresa Foster at 712 Thornwood Way.
I want to discourage you from approving the agreement that would allow unconventional oil and gas drilling, including fracking, in the city limits. The word is, once you let drilling into your city, you'll never be able to get rid of them. The issue at hand is this type of drilling is too harmful to allow into Longmont. Why do you think we are behind the Longmont Public Health, Safety, and Wellness Act to amend our city charter? We have talked to thousands of Longmont citizens already who don't want drilling in the city. And I don't believe that the red line regulations will protect us, especially with the loophole allowing exceptions for drilling in the residential areas. And I just wanted to point out in our Longmont magazine here, it says, a diverse, safe, and family-friendly city. Longmont features a long list of activities for all ages. Fracking isn't one of those. So don't do the right thing. No fracking in Longmont city limits. Thank you.
Marilyn Belchinski, followed by Ann Harper.
Marilyn Belchinski, 1703 Whitehall Drive, Unit 1C. Good evening, Mayor Coombs and council members. For the last several weeks, I've been listening as I walked with this clipboard around our community. This is our petition clipboard. It says, let the people vote on fracking in Longmont. Our health, our future, our Longmont. Sign the petition and go to the website for information. If you want information, ourlongmont.org. I've been listening to the voices of the people of this community. Most of them don't write or call or speak to the city council. They don't write letters to the editor of our newspapers. They do, however, care about the city that is their home. As I've carried this petition, I've listened to people who feel their voices are not heard, who feel they have no choices, no options, because that is what a greedy industry and some of our government leaders want us to believe, even right here in Longmont. I am here to say that we have choices, and so do you. Our city council members, do not allow fear, threats, and greed to drown out the voices of thousands of people of this city. As I've carried this petition and communicated with our citizens, those who have signed the petition in their hopes of having a say at the ballot box in November, and those who wish they could have signed, but can't because they don't live in the city of Longmont. They wanted to sign because they've had firsthand experience with what it's like to live with fracking in their own communities. The smells, reduced levels of air quality, the noise, earth vibrations, hundreds of truck trips carrying loads of water, that's 2 to 5 million gallons each time a well is fracked, toxic chemicals and sand being transported over their roads, causing damage that they end up having to pay for. I've also met many people who thank me for doing what our health, our future, our Longmont is doing. They are grateful that someone is listening to them and hearing their voices. They do not want the horizontal drilling that will occur under our homes, under our gardens and farmland, under our roads, houses of worship, and our recreational areas. I am requesting that you hold off on any actions until after the vote on this petition for a charter amendment in November. Don't be influenced by greed and be guided. Please let me finish. This is too important
Your
to
time's
a
up.
lot
I
of
can only
people.
go 3 minutes.
I represent thousands of people that
Sorry, 3 minutes is 3 minutes. I already get through.
approve this agreement. Don't wrap up our city.
Ann Harper.
Hello, I'm Ann Harper from I live at 517 County Road 18. And does anybody think about 350 feet and trucks and things that are about the size of this room 350 feet away? I mean, this is probably, 100 feet. It's 350 feet is nothing as a setback, nothing. Neither is 500, neither is 750. I live half a mile from the fracking as it was happening near my house, and I lived with it for 3 months, and we still have smells coming in. It is I think that I'm wondering if everybody here could go down Weld County Line Road and go to one of those big sites and just stand there and feel what it's like to be next to those things. And if you were going to be someone who had a house or kids going to a school or living at, anything, just feel what it's like. They are an abomination. They don't belong in a city. It's an industry. And it's truly a greedy person that would choose business over lifestyle. And it's mind-boggling that anyone of you would do it and think you have the right to do it. I don't even live in Longmont. And I don't want to drive into a town that has these things. They're awful. I live near them. I know. Anyway, it's an insult to the democratic process if you vote tonight to approve something like this. Purely an insult. And we can never go back. I have a true story that somebody wrote. I don't know his name. I'll read it quickly. One of our petitioners was recently approached by a man from Fremont County, Wyoming, home of the unfortunate and infamous town of Pavilion. The man looked longingly at the petitioner's clipboard and said, he wished he could sign. The man proceeded to describe how his entire county was trashed. He talked of ozone clouds in the wintertime, ruined trout streams, worthless farms and ranches, and air pollution worse than he'd ever seen in any city. And he looked at the clipboard again and said, He wished he could be helped because no one ever lifted a finger to help them. We're just a bunch of prairie settlers up here, he said. We got overrun, and he rattled off the huge list of oil companies that ruined their world. He had a passion that no one in this room could ever match. Don't let them in, he said. And the petitioner said, we won't. So you got 750 feet for a setback. Not bad. Except the country is waking up and days of 1 mile setbacks and municipal bans are just around the corner. We won't forget what happened to our good neighbors to the north. We will trust no backroom deals that might disappear like our property values. They can keep on knocking all they want, but like the man from Wyoming said, once they get their foot in the door, there's just no stopping them. Think about it. It's your life, too.
Sue Palmer, or can you read that? Eve Palmer. Excuse me, Eve Palmer.
My name is Eve Palmer. I live at 1322.
Turn on your pull the mic down, please.
I don't live at live at 2129 Squire Street. I won't say much because if I do, I will start to cry. Don't approve this. Not before you let the people of Longmont tell you what they desire for this community through a petition process and the ballot. Please support and defend the will of the people who elected you. Thank you.
Padma Wick. Followed by Joyce Buzio.
Mayor Coombs and council members, I'm Padma Wick from 4213 Frederick Circle. Your agreements seem complex. In order to make it seem that little old grandmothers like me would not be able to understand it all. But we do understand what is happening to us. What most disturbs me about this agreement is that our elected officials, in whom we have put our sacred trust to protect our health, environment, and properties, are misinforming the public. Actually, us little old grandmothers don't like the word misinformation. We're more direct. We use the word lie. And if you're withholding critical information from all the people of Longmont, like the people that I too have been petitioning and who are not here tonight, then you are telling a lie. So are you telling all the people of Longmont that instead of holding oil and gas responsible for polluting the water at Trail Ridge Middle School with levels of benzene 100 times the limit for groundwater, I quote the TC, you will be paying them $500,000 to please stop doing that? No, you're not telling them that. Are you telling all the people that you're pledging up to $850,000 from what should be Longmont's future oil and gas royalties to pay the cost of drilling at new sites east of Coast County Line Road? No, you're not telling them that. Are you telling all the people that you are opening up new locations where the city will partner with TOP and expand their mineral interests and drilling rights on city property? No, you are not telling them that. Are you telling all the people that you are allowing wells on public lands previously reserved for trail use, open space, and reservoir expansion? No, you are not telling them that. I am not opposed to safe energy extraction, and I'm used to differences of opinion, but I do not tolerate a lie. You have been given all the information so that you know both sides, and you are still choosing to override the health, environment, and property rights of people of Longmont. But truth has a way in time of coming to light, or shall we say, of seeping into the aquifer and into the drinking water.
Joyce, no applause. Joyce Puzo, followed by Kay Fissinger, followed by Michael Belmont.
Joyce Buzzio. I reside in Longmont, 2200 Santa Fe Drive. Mayor and City Council. I'm speaking tonight on the issue of oil and gas drilling in the city of Longmont and the impact this drilling will have on the citizens of Longmont. It is unfortunate that several city council members are not governing for the welfare of the citizens of Longmont. However, I would personally like to thank the mayor and those council members who have clearly worked day after day to protect us from the consequences this community may face in the months and years to come as a result of oil and gas drilling. Let's not forget, all of you were elected by the citizens of Longmont to make decisions that affect the health and welfare of all of us. Some of you truly have our welfare in mind, while others purely are voicing opposition on the basis of their political affiliations and agendas, while disregarding what the people of Longmont in great number have been asking you to do. That is, I and many thousands of the citizens of Longmont do not want fracking in our community. I and many thousands of citizens do not want fracking in our residential neighborhoods, where all of us live and children go to school, worship, and play. Nor do we want oil and gas drilling near or in our open space land, trails and parks, golf courses, and Union Reservoir. However, since the state is a proponent of oil and gas drilling, we have no choice right now but to allow drilling in the city of Longmont, and you have the obligation as our city council to pass the best regulations possible to be legally challenged or not on oil and gas drilling that protects all of us from air and water pollution, ground contamination, and property damage, and to impose setbacks that will keep our residential neighborhoods residential and not turn our neighborhoods into industrial drilling sites. It is my understanding that the city of Longmont and Top Operating have negotiated an agreement on a dozen or so properties for drilling sites in Longmont, and tonight the city plans to bring forward this agreement to council for review. Without the people of Longmont hearing any of the details, you haven't even agreed to the signing of regulations on oil and gas drilling that would protect the citizens of Longmont. This is unconscionable. Don't you think the citizens of Longmont should be made aware of this agreement and its details or any other agreements with oil and gas drilling companies? Were you planning to make the citizens of Longmont aware? Evidently not. So much for transparency. I guess some of you on this city council in opposition of the regulations don't care whether a drilling rig is in your backyard or whether your property values won't be worth the paper the deed was written. I do, and a great number of citizens in Longmont do too. I would like to think you have our best interests at heart, and some of you do, but some of you clearly, in meeting after meeting, have not, by stalling the vote on the regulations on the most insignificant detail. The question is, will you vote tonight to pass the regulations, and will you work to protect the health and welfare of the people of Longmont?
Thank you. Kay Fissinger, followed by Michael Belmont.
Kay Fissinger, 2199 Creekside Drive. This Longmont City Council has betrayed the citizens of Longmont on the issue of oil and gas drilling and fracking every step of the way. You betrayed us when you assigned the issue to 3 boards, the Board of Environmental Affairs, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and the Water Board, and then essentially disregarded most of the recommendations in the last draft of the ordinance, the one before Councilman Bagley's red line. And who knows what will be left after tonight's fiasco. I won't even call it sausage making, because that description actually elevates what we are likely to hear tonight. You betrayed us by ignoring testimony from citizens and experts regarding the dangers of fracking to health, from air pollution and to water resources. And that's just the tip of the melting iceberg from the likes of leaked methane gas, many times more lethal to the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. Thousands, yes, thousands of Longmont citizens have made it clear to you that they oppose, let me repeat that, oppose fracking for oil and gas within Longmont. And now the pièce de résistance. You are prepared to sign a contract with the devil, not only disregard the will of the people, but to do so in a way that undercuts. Let me repeat that, undercuts those who have been gathering signatures and signing petitions to ban fracking in Longmont. And you've been reckless in signing away the constitutional rights of the citizens. And you have the audacity, and let me repeat that, the audacity to do so, claiming that you are, and I quote from the recitals in the master contract that accompanies the operator's agreement, in a manner consistent with and protective of the rights of its citizens. And quote, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the city's citizens. You can make that statement about protecting Longmont citizens until the cows come home, but that does not make it honest, true, or credible. Why don't you just drop the charade, once and for all? Tell the citizens of Longmont who you really represent, but don't expect us to believe you when you say you represent us, because you represent Top Operating, the Colorado Oil and Gas Association, every company and corporation within the oil and gas industry, and the most disgusting of all, American Western Tradition Partnership. Who wouldn't know honor and integrity if it slapped them upside their collective corrupt heads? They reared those hideous heads in 2009 to get Baum, Witt, Santos, and Samori into office, and again in 2011 to get Finley and Bagley for good measure. They knew what they were why they were doing this, even though it was initially well under the citizens' radar. They wanted a council who would be their lapdogs, and damn it, they got it.
Michael Belmont, followed by Travis Whipple.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Coombs. Michael Belmont, 841 Tenacity Drive. I have a quiz for you, council members. What do these famous stories have in common? Samson and Delilah, Caesar and Brutus, Jesus and Judas, Jacob and Esau, Macbeth and Duncan. If you were thinking betrayal, deception, misleading, you were right. Do you really wish to be remembered as the Judas Council, the Brutus Brigade, the Delilah delegation that betrayed its very citizens? I refer to the complex surface agreement document before you tonight that was created, yes, behind closed doors, as I perceive it, with the apparent intent to hastily pass it in one session tonight, without adequate opportunity for public vetting or input. An agreement that not only promotes the oil and gas industry and fracking at the expense of public lands previously designated for open space, trails, reservoir expansion, but flies in the face of thousands upon thousands of citizens who, with one voice, are telling you they do not want fracking near or in this city. It is a betrayal of your citizens' confidence, goodwill, and trust. These citizens have signed their name on this petition, indicating they believe that every citizen in Longmont deserves, every voting citizen, the right to have a voice concerning the perils of fracking in their fair town. They signed to place the Longmont Public Health, Safety, and Wellness Act on the November ballot that would prohibit fracking in the city of Longmont. What you appear to be doing tonight is a breach of every one of those signatories' confidence, an insult to every one of them. I dare say a blatant betrayal of their trust. Now the choice is yours this night to either become partners with your residents by postponing a decision on the surface use agreement, taking time to explain it adequately to your citizens, giving them an opportunity for real input, or you can join the ranks of the great betrayers of history, being remembered as the Judas Council, the Brutus Brigade, the Delilah Delegation. In any case, you are facing a formidable force of thousands upon thousands that have already cast their vote by signing this petition and, in fact, qualifying it for the ballot measure for November. Join us at the polls, won't you?
Travis Whipple.
Travis Whipple, 1368 Clemson Drive here in Longmont. There are thousands and thousands of people who want fracking in Longmont. I'm having a hard time understanding the opposition to fracking in Longmont. We are facing budget shortfalls. We are experiencing continued high employment. Our school system is pushing for yet another mill levy tax to share up their own budgets. And as a city, we are asking the question, how do we bring in more business to our city? And yet, despite having the most restrictive regulations in the United States, here in Colorado, we are seeking greater restrictions. What message are we sending to all these potential businesses? Come to Longmont. Unless we don't like you, then get ready to fight lawsuits and even the potential change to our city charter to ban you outright. But otherwise, we're open for business. But it's just oil and gas. If we can do this to property holders and their constitutional rights, what won't we do? To those who say it's too dangerous, they use hidden dangerous substances. I ask these two questions. One, where is your anger with KFC? They use 10 undisclosed ingredients. Where is the demand that they release what's in their recipe? We directly consume their products, and they use MSG. Isn't MSG bad for us? We should change our charter to ban KFC. Oh, but the FDA says KFC is safe. Well, there are several government agencies that say fracking, done within the current state regulations, is safe. Why can we trust the FDA and not these other organizations? Do we now pick and choose which government agencies we trust? My second question, where's the outrage over ethanol? Where's the city's ethanol regulations? Oh, but ethanol is green. Most of the opposition to fracking, I've heard, is the potential water contamination. But ethanol isn't a potential. It's a reality, both in production and driving our cars. Driving our cars with 10% ethanol is polluting our groundwater with formaldehyde. Yes, formaldehyde is a byproduct of burning ethanol. The formaldehyde then exits our tailpipes and enters our groundwater directly. And this administration wants to up that to 15%. Where is the petition to ban ethanol in Longmont? It's hypocrisy. Finally, at the last major discussion here, it was implied that those who supported fracking must not love our children as much as those who oppose it because we didn't bring them before you to show just how much we care. Well, I took offense to that, so if this is the only way to make my point, here are 3 of my 6 children. The others are way too young to be out this late. I love my 6 children. I chose to have every one of them. I am up here fighting for their future more than mine. I want my children to know that they can pursue their goals in life with the understanding that a limited government will defend their rights, not take them away or restrict them because they're no longer politically correct. Now, Thank you.
Walter Engelhardt.
Walter Engelhardt, 10650 Yellowstone Road, Longmont, Colorado. I didn't prepare a speech tonight, which I normally do. Boy, you guys are really getting beat up here tonight. I came here prepared to speak against this anti-fracking, and I still believe that it's a fear factor that these people are proposing before you, and I don't think there's any grounds for all the things that they say are bad about it. So I ask you to be responsible, physically responsible council members, and vote what you think is best for the city of Longmont and our future. Thank you very much.
Paul Danish.
Paul Danish, 2130 10th Avenue, Longmont. Longmont residential areas are pretty typical of residential areas in the United States, which is to say they are totally auto-dependent and gas-dependent. Without automobiles, those neighborhoods would become largely unlivable almost instantly, because that's the way they're designed. And they were designed that way by city ordinances. The same is true with gas. Virtually every residence in the state of Colorado is heated with natural gas, 90,000 cubic feet a year per house. Ban drilling, and you are banning the activities that make Longmont's lifestyle possible. And let's not kid ourselves. We are talking about drilling. We're not talking about fracking. Fracking is just a thing that makes drilling practical these days. I think there's something here that's worse than hypocrisy. If you are not willing to accept drilling, but keep driving and keep using gas, but keep attacking its production, you are being worse than hypocritical. You're being immoral. It's saying, it's cool to trash somebody else's neighborhood, but not my own, in order to maintain my lifestyle. And that is essentially what we are hearing from the people who are being anti-frackers here. But it's worse than that, because the United States is dependent on oil and natural gas. If we do not produce it domestically, we're going to have to get it from overseas, which we're doing right now and have been doing for the last 20 years. Set aside the price question of that. Many of the people who are objecting to fracking here, especially the activists, just a few years ago were howling about no blood for oil. Apparently, blood for oil is cool if the alternative is producing oil and natural gas near your home. The fact is that all of that is kind of silly when you consider that fracking has been going on in close proximity to Longmont for at least 40 years. There have been 20,000 oil wells drilled in Weld County. Almost all of them are fracked. They may not be horizontal wells, but fracking is a very common practice in the oil industry, and the only way they get all that gas out of the Wattenberg field is by fracking those wells. I think what's going on is decadent. I think that there is no need for these regulations. The agreement with Top Oil doesn't seem like a terrible deal, although I could see there's a lot of problems that might arise from it. This whole argument strikes me more as a solution looking for a problem than anything else. I think you could do just as well by leaving it to the state of Colorado.
Thank you.
And
next up is Tim Rempel, followed by Tom Cagle. Yeah, please don't speak out when other people are speaking. Go ahead.
Good evening, Tim Rimple, 2954 Spinnaker Place. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I had the opportunity to review both the red line and the proposed agreement and had some comments on both. The regs look good. The only major question I had was removing the indemnification on page 20. Other than that, I think it looks great. thanks to city staff for all the hard work and folks on council as well, the work on that. I'd advocate please pass that tonight. I think it's great. I think it's time to do that. Let me move on to the agreement. I took a look at that, and there are some good things about it, and it has been reported. I had a conversation with Scott Rache, apologies if that name's not quite right, the reporter from the Times Call. Capping the rider well is good. Water monitoring is good. Ban on open pits is good. All those are good things that are in there. Then what I did, not being an attorney who can't evaluate some of the stuff and not being an engineer in the field who can evaluate some of the operating stuff, I took a look at the maps. I looked at setbacks. I looked at where it was. I talked to Scott about this, and he did this too. You can pull these up, pull them up next to him in Google, take a straight piece of paper, start measuring distance. Let me talk distances for a second. First, starting in Exhibit 1B, the Upper Adrian site near Trail Ridge Middle School. That site's now about approximately 900 feet away from the school. Pretty good, pretty good. The Lower Adrian, some 3,500 feet from there, that's not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, that's a long ways away. In Exhibit 1D, next to the Carbon Valley Regional Library, it's about 1,300 feet north of there. Still, pretty good, pretty good. Then I got to Exhibit 1G, and my head exploded. Let me explain. 1G has to do with sandstone soccer fields. And as we heard earlier from city staff, the site there is approximately 400 feet south of the south edge of that facility. That, I gather, is more than 350 feet, but certainly less than 750. It does not comply with the 750. I guess in this case, that somehow doesn't apply to this area. Now, I've had kids that played soccer in this town for a decade. There's a zillion kids on this field. Once I figured this out, I also called St. Vrain Valley Football Club, Longmont United Soccer Association, and Storm, which operates out of North Glen, but also has a facility or operates teams in Longmont, notifying them of what was going on. St. Vrain Football Club said they would probably try and send a representative this evening. I do not know. I'm not currently involved with that organization personally, to speak against passing the agreement with this in place. Get rid of Exhibit 1G. Get rid of doing it at Sandstone. Let me remind the community that Sandstone is a community and district park that is owned by the city of Longmont. So what we're doing is we're allowing exploration, or proposing to allow exploration there. Thank you.
Tom Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for giving us a chance to speak. Tom Cagle, 2501 22nd Drive. Those of us that have been in town a while may remember Amgen when they moved into the current location at Nelson and Airport. What I remember about that, not the date, I had to look that up, it was 1999. What I remember about that was they moved in, or made their announcement, immediately following the announcement from the city of Boulder that they were going to put in place a restriction on commercial building. Boulder had never done that. Amgen's immediate answer, I think, was to find a location that was more amenable to business, Longmont. I thought that was good. That was good for Longmont. It was too bad for Boulder, but they chose a path of excessive regulation. Now we fast forward. I tried to find the date, but couldn't. But many of us remember Hayek Chevrolet had been on Main Street forever, probably since the 30s, well before I moved here. And they moved to Weld County a number of years ago. I don't know the details of why they moved. Many reasons. Could have been excessive regulation. My problem with what's going on here is that this is another layer of regulations on an industry. Another reason for business to consider other locations than Longmont. In particular, Weld County. Weld County is happy to have business. They're open for business. They reap the benefits of that. They have low taxes. They have no debt. They're not fighting a budget battle, which I just read about in yesterday's paper. So please, don't try and send a message to the world that Longmont is closed for business. Thank you.
Lindsay Garn. I think it's Gahn.
Hi, Lindsay Gunn, 2268 Indian Peak Circle. I'm a petitioner. I'm here with the our Longmont movement. I've been here 3 other times. You guys have heard from me. And I came with a really critical and tough speech that I wanted to read to you guys, but I think that that's been done tonight. And I changed my mind, although I do feel like Kay, and I do feel like Tim, and I do feel like Padma and everyone who's represented our time, our viewpoint up here. But this is exhausting. This is hard. This is hard on me. This is hard on you. I can't imagine, really, actually. I've spent hours, night after night after night, away from my family, petitioning, talking to people, educating people, trying to get the word out about this. I know you guys have put in a ton of time, too. And I want to believe that you really do have Longmont's best interests in mind. I want to believe that. I want to believe that the contract with TOP is an honest attempt to give us all what we want. On the surface, it looks like it is. Further setbacks, water monitoring, closing down Ryder, those things, I agree with Tim. I'm happy about that. But when there is a loophole for the residential zone ban, and we don't know what those exceptions would be, and frankly, I'm worried they'd be an ask and you shall receive sort of exception. And when there's a threat from TOP to sue us if our issue is passed in November, and when the water monitoring is done by them, that just doesn't feel like an honest attempt to protect us. I've stood in 105-degree temperatures, in toppling winds, in rain and lightning last night, asking people to sign this petition, and every time I stand, more and more people stand with me and eagerly sign this petition. People don't want fracking in this town. There are not thousands who do. And there are hundreds of cautionary tales in this country, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in New York, in Erie, in Weld County. We don't want to be Weld County. They can be open for business. We're ignoring them. And now it really feels like the city council has sold out the east side of town. I'm never going to go to Sandstone Ranch again. I'm never going to go to Union Reservoir again, and that breaks my heart. I'm terrified of this stuff. It shouldn't be in our city limits. I believe that your choices tonight and TOP operating practices will drive people to the voting booths in November. Our city is actively going to take back our fate because it's our only choice. Thank you.
Chris Porzuchek.
Evening, Mayor, City Council. Chris Porzuchek, 12624 Weld County Road 1, Longmont. I'd like to thank the City Council that has done its part to protect the city. I think some of you up there are obviously working for, or more interested in staying open for business, and so be it, but I'm more worried about my family, and that trumps money. It trumps business. What good is money if we're filling our air full of methane? I appreciate what you guys have done to do and protect my family by moving the wells away and attempting to work with TOP to get those out. I do appreciate that, believe me. It doesn't change the fact that I still am out. The reason I am out is because every time I look at that map of Weld County and I see 20,000 wells, I go, uh-oh, here comes 10,000 more in the next 10 years or more than that. And it's going to surround our whole city. So I urge you to do the best to protect our city because it's coming all around this city. Some might say, well, look at Weld County, look at Greeley. They're surrounded by them. They don't have any issues. Well, you know what? They doubled their amount in the last 10 years. So while they may have been doing it for 40 years, they're intensively doing it now. A lot more than they used to. They're coming in and refracking them more often. So not is it just 20,000 wells, it's 20,000 continually refracked wells, along with the additional ones they're going to bring. So there will be a cumulative effect. I'm hoping 10, 20 years from now, it's not as bad as we all want it. I mean, as bad as we think it's going to be. Believe me, I don't want it to be. Believe me. I'm hoping it doesn't, but I'm not going to take that chance with my family. We're moving here regardless of what rules, whatever you do. I'm in Weld County. I'm on Weld County. There's no protection for me from what you do, but I do appreciate everything that you have done, anybody that has done anything to protect my family. but I just think the potential health risks are not worth the money. Every time that I hear, that's the only good thing I hear about this is money. Money, 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 money. Okay, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to save our children. That's not going to save our health. Low gas prices. Give me another option. The infrastructure is set up by the people that were in oil and gas. That's why we have to drive cars everywhere. That's why we have gas in all our houses, because that's the way they wanted it to be, and that's called a monopoly. You don't want gas prices to go up? Don't allow us to sell it to China. Because the only reason we sell it to China is because we want more money. So keep that in mind when people start fear-mongering about prices and economy. Well, we need jobs, so we can sell it to China. I'm not buying it. I would rather protect my child. So what I'm doing is getting us out of that oil field. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Hall. Jeff Thompson.
Jeff Thompson, 1616 Sumner Street. Children are extremely vulnerable to endocrine disruptors that cause cancer. Mayor, you at one time voted for an ordinance that acknowledged that the endocrine disruptors emitted during oil and gas extraction is known to cause cancer. And so you know that. The ordinance tonight is very different from the ordinance when we had the public hearing that Councilmember Bagley was referring to. When we had the public hearing, the ordinance had a provision in it that said that the oil and gas drilling activity cannot emit materials that are known to have negative health effects, like cancer. Together with something in the preamble that acknowledged at least benzene, specifically benzene, does cause cancer. So you took all that out. So this is a completely different ordinance with regard to how it does or does not protect the health of the people. So that should clear up the issue as to whether or not there needs to be a public hearing on this. What you did on that provision that I was talking about is you just say that the emissions will be controlled by something like the Colorado Air Quality Control Act or something like that. You can tell us later. I sent you an email this morning, Mayor, and I asked you, how does that act, referenced in the ordinance, control these emissions that cause cancer, especially cancer in children? And you gave me a flippant answer. You said something about, I asked you, has the council, is there anything in writing where the council has ever been shown how that act works, how our children will be protected from getting cancer? And you gave me a really stupid, flippant answer. You said, well, we decided we didn't want to bruise our brains on that. I just want to ask you, Mayor Coombs, what kind of a man jokes about whether our kids get cancer? Mr. May negotiated a loophole into that agreement with TOP big enough to drive a truck through. They say that they will comply with this ordinance, but this ordinance gives them the right to ask for an exception to the ban on residential drilling if there's an operational conflict. Mr. May knows, because he surely read Voss v. Lund, that the Supreme Court has already decided there's an operational conflict.
3 minutes is up. Sorry. I guess next up is Doug Flanders, followed by Strider Benston.
My name is Doug Flanders. I'm with the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. It's good to be here. Thank you for the time and also for the extra time to speak tonight. We really appreciate that. Before you vote, I'd like to address a few statements that have been that you've been hearing over these last few months. First, that hydraulic fracturing has been linked to thousands of cases of contaminating groundwater. This is false. So says EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson and Dr. Mark Zobak, Stanford professor and advisor to the Secretary of Energy. Second, hydraulic fracturing is just not safe. Again, not true. So says Interior Secretary Ken Salazar and President Obama's top energy and climate advisor, Heather Zeichel. Third, hydraulic fracturing causes earthquakes. Again, not true. So says the National Academy of Sciences in a recently released study detailing their findings. Fourth, oil and gas is unregulated. Just not the case. Statewide, oil and gas is regulated by the COGCC, the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and the Department of Public Health and Environment for our air. At the federal level, despite the rhetoric that we have all been hearing and we read about, oil and gas is regulated under the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, Circular Superfund, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, Resource Conservation Recovery Act, or RCRA, and the Toxic Release Inventory. And what these are legal briefs showing how we do fall under each one of those. Fifth, oil and gas has caused serious local and regional air pollution across the country. Again, not true. In the Denver-Julesburg area, which is where we sit, in that Denver-Julesburg basin, the DJ basin, even with the large amount of car and truck-related emissions coming off by 25, air quality monitoring has shown that smog levels have fallen, and since 2006, gas production has climbed 32% in the Denver DJ basin. But during that same period, the state and EPA shows that Denver area smog levels have fallen. And also, this area does require green completions by the state and 95% of air emissions capture. Sixth, oil and gas doesn't follow best management practices. Again, the same story as before. This right here is just a few of hydraulic fracturing best management practices, and it's put forward by API, as established by API. The rigorous review and approval process was approved by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. API has created over 2,000 documents to enhance safety and improve quality assurance, which have been accepted worldwide by operators and by governments. In conclusion, I just ask that before you vote, that if you believe that the COGCC, CDPH&E, and all those elected officials that worked on these regs, current and those that came before them, just didn't do enough to protect Longmont, then vote yes.
Thank you.
But otherwise, please vote no.
Strider Benston.
Wow. Thank you. I'm Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. Mayor Coombs, City Council. I don't need to go into a lot of detail. You've heard serious testimonials. We've given you history. We've given you readings. We've given you Pavilion, Wyoming, and Marcellus Shale, and you can light your water on fire, all this kind of stuff. The point is, the science is trickling in, and we better pay attention to our communities. Montana, 100 years ago, passed a law that they should have the right to vote. It was a referendum. Their government had already been bought by the Copper Kings. That lasted 100 years until a few months ago the Supreme Court said, y'all folks in Montana are not allowed to vote. The corporations will vote for you. And so you will see their environment further destroyed soon. Ecuador is the first country in the world that says nature, the rights of nature, are now in their constitution. Theodore Roosevelt, 100 years ago, said that nature is sacred and created the national park system, the first one in the world. And that held really intact until somebody like James Watt came in and tried to sell it all off to his buddies. He escaped 19 felonies and got out with only a misdemeanor. But so are our communities, as I quoted from Justice Taney 175 years ago. I think, as Brian Bagley has pointed out the last 6 months, that maybe the regs that we have worked on so hard are the best we could get. But we have a petition. I think we ought to have a moratorium until after November to see how the people want. I agree with Michael Belmont and Joan Peck on that. This year we've already had more than 25,000 record high temperatures in this country. That's more than 100 times more than normal. Yes, the planet is cooking, but people don't pay any attention because of greed and because of impunity. I would quote from President Andrew Jackson's veto message, where he said, "The rich and powerful too often bend the axe of government to their selfish purposes, these would-be lordings of the paper dynasty." And in his farewell address to the country 175 years ago, he warned of the perils posed by the great moneyed corporations. Unless you become more watchful and check this spirit of monopoly and thirst for exclusive privilege, you will in the end find that the most important powers of government have been given or bartered away, and control over your direct has passed into the hands of these corporations 175 years ago.
I will open, oh yeah, I do have two more. That's right, on this new seat. Richard Blackstone, followed by Jenny Braun.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Richard Blackstock. I have absolutely nothing prepared. I live at 1935 Rannoch. Retired Schlumberger. I have no skin in this fight. I've heard so many things that are incorrect tonight, it boggles the mind. You have been elected to ponder and consider these actions. There will always be people who hear something bizarre and take it to the wall and will die to the death, fight to the death, and really have no idea what's going on. Fracking is not an issue. It occurs 10,000 feet down. There's no way that that material is getting into the groundwater. Horizontal. Hey, Mike.
He's got the floor.
Horizontal drilling. I heard that complained about. With horizontal drilling, you get one drill site, and you get the same effect of multiple well holes. Why wouldn't you want horizontal drilling? Only if you don't know what you're talking about. As far as the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania occasionally comes up with a new reg. The people doing the drilling there and extraction follow the new regs if something is determined to be a better way to go. It's not an issue. People in the oil business aren't trying to poop in their own nests. They want to earn a living. They don't want to screw up the environment. They have children too. This should be your decision. There are too many people who really don't have a clue. Thank you very much.
Jimmy Braun.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for hearing my comments. And I apologize for my penmanship. It's Ginny Brannon. I'm Assistant Director for Water and Energy at the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. In that capacity, my responsibilities include interfacing between the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission and the Executive Director's Office and the Governor's Office. I want to thank this commission for giving COGCC, the operator, and your staff the opportunity to work through the local government designee, or LGD, process to find common ground on the terms and conditions of oil and gas activities in Longmont. That process has culminated in an operator agreement that will be before you tonight, that includes issues of concern in your rules, such as water monitoring, and site specifics, such as size and location. Through the LGD process, the operator has agreed to a number of other conditions, including a 750 feet setbacks from buildings, which is twice the COGCC requirement. And your staff is pursuing 2 applications before the COGCC for designated outside activity areas, which, if approved, will give you riparian setbacks around Union Reservoir, Sandstone Ranch, and St. Vrain Greenway. This is proof that we can work together to arrive at a win-win solutions, and we appreciate that you put your trust in our joint process. And I want to especially thank Councilman Bagley for serving on the Governor's Task Force, the protocols from which are helping us to refine and improve the LGD process statewide. LGDs are powerful tools for local jurisdictions. LGDs have the ability to request that COGCC staff impose site-specific conditions of approval on every state permit. If the COGCC staff disagrees with the LGC's request, the local government can then demand a hearing before the entire 9-member state commission. The commission is comprised of diverse individuals who share one common goal, that Colorado serve as a national model for responsible oil and gas development. The best way to ensure that the state attains that goal is for the state to impose appropriate site-specific conditions of approval on a case-by-case basis, such as additional water sampling, wildlife mitigation measures, and riparian setbacks. These procedures provide for unparalleled local involvement and heightened protections where appropriate. Regarding the provisions in your draft rule that COGCC finds in conflict with state rules, COGCC submitted written comments on Longmont's proposed regulations in a letter from Assistant Attorney General Jake Matter to the City of Longmont Attorney Eugene May, dated April 27th of this year. I do not intend to rehash those issues tonight, but we have discussed them, along with other issues, with your staff through many meetings over the past year. I would like to direct your attention to a report that just came out from the Center for Energy Economics and Policy. They surveyed regulators in 31 states that have significant shale gas reserves and assessed the level of regulation for 20 elements, such as setback restrictions and casing and cementing depth. While there is narrative, the results are largely reported
Sorry,
from maps.
your time's up. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, come on up. Line up. Yeah, just line up.
Richard Yale.
Yes. Okay. Address?
Richard Yale, 1211 Baker Street, Longmont, Colorado. I would like to thank each and every one of you that for the sacrifices that you've made. I'm offended to the core of my soul at the way that I've heard our neighbors talk to you. They have no idea that these 7 of you are the only people that are standing between you and a totalitarian government.
Hey, come on, you address the council.
You you disrespect these people. You ask them to make a law. They went out. They've come back with a law. You keep telling them a lie, so you're telling them that the law is a lie, not them. And they did everything that you asked. I've been to all of these meetings since December 7th, and I hear people make the same mistaken comments over and over and over. It scared the daylights out of me the first meeting, and I went home and I started learning about it, and I've gone into depth to find out just what this process is. And it's safe. Now, as far as there's 2 different areas that are going on, and as far as the law, and there's the structure of the law in which the Supreme Court is responsible to see that all the districts under the court conform to the organizational structure of the Constitution. And as far as the rights go, that's a separate issue, and if they move you into a setup where, for example, you don't have a right to trial and you're essentially declared guilty before you have a chance to prove innocent, which is some of the ways that you would push these regulations. There is a recourse for it, and I'm not going to get into it, but they say that the state cannot regulate, and you have the overlap. Okay, if that's a structural problem, it's not a rights problem, and the original jurisdiction to solve that issue is the Supreme Court, period. And so if you have one of these structural issues come up in the process, then there is a way to cure that. And so they're saying the thing that they're saying is there's a gap in the regulation, and that's nonsense. In fact, they're all here at the wrong body. They should have been at the legislature if they want the law changed.
Go ahead. Please come up to the mic and state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Ruby Bowman. I live at 1512 Left Hand Drive in Longmont. I'm a Longmont resident. I'm a homeowner, a taxpayer, and I'm a former member of PRAB, the Parks and Recreation Citizen Advisory Board. And this is the board, that citizen board, that also oversees our open space program. I'm very concerned about the TOP agreement, and I'm wondering why this agreement did not go before PRAB for the review and input, particularly since open space money will be used as part of this agreement, and wells will be on Herner open space and other open space properties. I urge you to delay the vote on this agreement and refer it to PRAB. Please don't circumvent this important advisory board. In addition, I want to state I'm American Indian. I'm Navajo Indian. And I remember when I was a child and I heard stories, and if you go to the reservation, you'll hear these stories about how uranium companies came to the reservation and told the Navajo people and their leaders, the council, that uranium mining is safe and that it would bring jobs and increase the standard of living for the Navajo people. What would eventually happen is that, in fact, it wasn't safe, and that these mine workers, these Navajo men who worked in the mines, eventually got lung cancer because they were inhaling that radium. Even the mine tailings that came from these uranium mines were just left out. And traditional Navajo women, people who live in the areas near the mines, they would use these tailings to make their traditional house, the hogan, which, you know, it's basically a hut that's made of wood and dirt, except the dirt in this case was the radioactive uranium mine tailings. These mining companies said that this process, this mining, would be beneficial for the people there and that it was safe. But in fact, now we know it was devastating for the Navajo people, and they don't want that type of mining to return to the reservation. I'm afraid tonight you heard some of the oil and gas representatives say fracking is safe. But I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen to the people of Longmont that happened to the Navajo people. So I think you need to be very cautious and proceed slowly and let this agreement, which of the top oil agreement, go to PRAB and the other Citizen Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim. Please state your name and address for the record.
James Kenworthy, 107 Caribou Place. I didn't come prepared to talk, but I thought maybe I could stand up here and say a few things. I was passing a petition today at an undisclosed location, and I talked to a young man that was raised on a small ranch up by Loveland. Here's what he told me. His dad signed a lease with the oil companies. They drilled on his land. He got a little bit of money from the lease. They ruined his well. They ruined his water. This kid he's not paid by anybody to say certain things. I talked to another guy at another undisclosed location. He works in the oil fields. He's a citizen. He signed the petition. He says it doesn't have any business being any closer than a half a mile from anything. There's more stories. I'm not going to go into them. A lot of support from people that can't sign it, thousands of signatures, and no matter what happens, no matter if we get it on the ballot or not, we still have the constitutional right to protect our health and well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Scott Whipple, 1368 Clemson Drive, Longmont. So I wanted to share a Thomas Jefferson quote. He says, "Instead of embarrassing commerce under piles of regulating laws, duties, and prohibitions, could it be relieved from all its shackles in all parts of the world? Could every country be employed in producing that which nature has best fitted it to produce, and each be free to exchange with others mutual surpluses for mutual wants, the greatest mass possible would then be produced of those things which contribute to human life and human happiness. The numbers of mankind would be increased and their condition bettered." I'm pretty young. I have hopefully a long life to live. A lot of people oppose fracking because, they are afraid it's going to harm them. There's no evidence of that. And plus this, I look around and there's no jobs. There's debt crises all over. Fracking can come in and give jobs, is the way I see it. I was studying today, and in the Denver Post it says, while Boulder County is looking into possible ways to impose additional regulation of oil and gas exploration, Weld County enthusiastically supports that industry. Weld Commissioner Barbara Kirkmeyer told people attending a Longmont Republican Women's Lunch on Thursday, oil and gas holdings represent about 50% of Weld's assessed property values, and the industry is an important source of tax revenue for both local and state government, Kirkmeyer said. Not only is Weld County debt-free, but I believe they're currently in a surplus, and I just read in the Longmont Times, as well as everyone else's, we're going to have some debt problems in the future. The oil and gas companies are partly responsible for that increase in Weld County. I'm only 24. I'm hoping for a future of jobs, prosperity, and growing economy. But if opposing fracking, you limit Longmont's potential and its future. So, for those who oppose fracking, why oppose jobs?
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. People, I would ask you to not refrain when other folks are talking. Everyone has been very respectful up to this point, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. Everyone has a right to be heard, has a right to speak without interruption. If we're going to continue to have outbursts, why don't we just end the public hearing right now?
I agree. We'll go on with the next.
My name is Susan Hall. I live at 2636 West 134th Circle, Broomfield, Colorado. I am a candidate for the Green Party for the U.S. House of Representatives, District 2. And I thought I would just make some comments on what I've already heard and the things that I was thinking. First off, I recognize that I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody does with energy. Germany, however, is certainly leading the way, and we're probably falling behind in most of the countries. My son-in-law is building houses with geothermal and solar heat. It's almost not using any kind of gas, oil at all. But you know what? The oil companies get more subsidies and a higher rate than those companies who are trying to change over. And eventually we're going to have to change over anyway. I did mention somebody say, Ken used the name of Ken Salazar as a reason for what he had to say about how good fracking was. But if you will recall, Mr. DeChristopher was sent to prison because he was bidding on property in Utah because Mr. Ken Salazar was trying to sell that land that didn't belong to him. Now, I get most of my resources from Democracy Now!, TruthDig, Alternet, and Common Sense. So you guys can use that too. And I think it'd be a good idea to publish in the paper where everybody gets their resources so we compare where they come from. A couple other things that came up while people were talking here was we now know that formaldehyde is terribly dangerous, and why don't we worry more about that? Well, we certainly should. Mr. Clinton did apologize to the people of Haiti for sending them $3 million worth of trailers that are now known to be contaminated. Also, we know the trans fat is terrible, and in Europe, they've outlawed it. But here, we just changed its name to hydrogenized oil. Maybe we should work on that too. It was a good point, but taken the wrong direction. Disrespectful to the people that are beloved people. I think that you guys are being disrespectful to all those people that got those signatures. And yes, there are people who are on the other side, and they should be free to do the signatures too. But there is a difference for those who go out there and do the labor. And there should be shown some respect for that. Somebody else brought up the issue of using the oil in other countries, specifically Iraq. Well, I heard on Democracy Now! Today that there's a young man who followed all that information for 10 years, and the main reason for going to Iraq was for the oil. Lieutenant Colonel Kowalski has also said that. But as it turns out, the people who are now in charge of that government have not said it was okay, so they are illegally purchasing that oil up to this date.
Time's up. Thank you. And this will be the last one.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, my name is Jake Marsing. I live at 949 Pass Drive here in Longmont, Colorado. And real quick, I want to thank every single one of you for working on this issue for it's almost been a year now since Weld County came to you. It's consumed your time, consumed your effort, and on behalf of the city, I thank you for your work, every single one of you. A gentleman, a couple of speakers before me referenced the fact that he was young. He's 24. I'm young too. And on behalf of most of the young people, at least the ones I've talked to in Longmont, we don't want fracking. Fracking is bad. It endangers our community. We've established that. And I'm asking you, I'm trying to keep it short, do what you can to protect our homes and our schools. I think these regs do a decent job, a defensible job. It doesn't go as far as I'd like, but do what you can. And if you can't do it, then I'm sure that the people in the 3 rows behind me will. Thank you.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. Before we go crazy. get back to business.
It was really nice. I just get back on and do that line. It was a little painful.
Yeah.
Then I would talk to yourself.
Yeah. All right. Let's go through the regs that we've decided to use as the baseline, which is I guess we'll refer to as the amendment. Let's see. The supplemental red line version. What I'm hoping to do this, we're just going to go through kind of red line section by red line section and just do a up or down vote. Is that how you guys would like to proceed? Okay. Okay. Well, Councilmember Samori.
Okay. I don't know if I personally agree with that. I mean, essentially, the document is 95% the same as what we originally put together.
Right.
Why can't we just discuss the issues that are of concern and move on? It would save us a lot of time and headache and
Okay.
a lot of unnecessary discussion.
Okay.
You know, to personally,
Well, that's kind of what I didn't really mean by going every single red line, but just the basic, preamble in or out. Yada.
well, we've already made a motion to substitute
Okay.
the new marked up regulations as to the original. I believe the new ones eliminate
Okay.
that. So if we agree that the new modified redlined version is what we want to move with,
Okay.
if there are issues of specific concern by council members, let's discuss those, but not go through word by word.
Absolutely.
Okay, because again, we've had plenty of time to review this. We gave direction to staff months ago to come out with this. A lot of the language that's in there is still the same from when we first reviewed it. We've had multiple meetings. We've had multiple chances to go through it and mark up and say what we like and what we don't like. And to wait till this last minute to go through it line by line, I find it objectionable.
No, that wasn't my intent to go through it line by line. Councilmember Levison.
I think we should just use the same method we started chunking on last week where, if people have issues with fine-tuning the language that we make a proposal and discuss it and then move on with the next item. And I would welcome everybody to weigh in on it because I think that that's the way we're going to get to the document that is most acceptable to the majority.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't have any heartburn over the first 6 pages. Councilmember Levison.
Yes. So as I mentioned last week on its page in the new document we're looking at would be page 5, line 3. I would move to strike and encourage responsible.
Page 5, line 3.
Line 3.
Oh.
It says allow and encourage responsible. I would move to strike the words and encourage responsible. I think that having spent 6 months, I think that kind of is the mark of responsibility, the care and time we've spent.
I guess I don't have a problem with taking that language out. Why don't we vote? All right, I'll second your motion. Shall we vote on whether, or well, first off, Councilmember Bagley?
Do you want to amend your motion and just take out and encourage?
You know, I think that we're doing things in a responsible fashion, and you know, it's yeah. Let's just vote.
We got to reset it. Okay, it stays the way it was with encourage and responsible left in. Councilmember Finley.
I don't have any heartburn until we get to section C4, which is where
Do you have a page number?
number 7, it starts with line 30. That's where we prohibit oil and gas drilling in residential zones. This is the part that will cause us lawsuits, and that's where I have trouble. I would move that we take it out. Second.
Okay, let's vote on whether we take it out.
Let's have some discussion.
Okay, Councilmember Bagley.
I think that this is the heart and soul of the regs, and I think that we heard a lot of comments earlier, and it is a complicated issue, but I also think that, I mean, at the risk of insulting everyone in the room, including myself, none of us know what the hell we're talking about. It's too complicated. None of us are that smart. We don't know if it's that dangerous. We don't know how much money there is. We don't know the future. So right now, better safe than sorry. Keep it away from homes and schools. Seems like a no-brainer. And other than that, you know, we can't stop the state. We can't stop drilling. And the question is, well, should we if we could? Don't know. But I think keeping the residential, it's not a residential ban. It's basically us maintaining land use authority here locally. And I think that's a good thing.
I guess I agree with that totally. I feel really strongly that that's our strongest point and the whole purpose of our regs is to protect ourselves, not from what we see right now, because right now we don't absolutely have to have it for these deals with top, but in the future we can't predict the future. We can't predict, you know, new brown fields, new residential areas. I feel real strongly that we keep the residential ban in our regulations. Councilmember Witt.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Joan Peck. And what Joan Peck said is that we could drive a Mack truck through this. And I agree. And the reason why it is the way it is and that there are exceptions is because we actually don't have the authority. We don't have the authority as currently the law stands to make this regulation. And that's kind of the crux, is that what we're going back and forth over is, no, we don't currently have that authority, but we should. And so how far do we push it? And so, yes, we have come to a meeting of the minds with one operator, and we think we can probably do it with many others. It feels as if we all want to get to the same point on one side of the wall. And our residents are very insistent that we should, not all of our residents, some of our residents are insisting that we should ban this activity in residential areas. Not that I disagree with that, but there is this wall that it currently stands. We have a door that we can go through, and we are going through that door with our agreement with Top Operating. Should we try to go through the brick wall? I say no, but I think that members on this council feel that, hey, my residents, they want me to walk through the brick wall, so that's what I'm going to do. So I understand where people stand, but I can't support it because currently we do not have that authority. We have a way around it, and we will be sued. And Councilmember Bagley was the one to tell us that we would be sued, and thank you for that. If we have a way around the wall, I just don't feel like we need to walk through it.
Councilmember Samori.
I don't much feel like walking through brick wall either. And I don't feel that we're doing that. We have a right to regulate the land use within the community. And we have, if there's a conflict, operational conflict that occurs because of that, we're saying that there is an option for them to apply for a variance, just like we do with any developer, landowner that's trying to build a residential area or a shopping mall or whatever the case may be. The land may be zoned for something specific, and they come and ask for a variance for us to amend it so it meets the new requirement. Okay? And as been stated many times before, the way that we are densely populated and built, there wouldn't be any risk of that ever happening. But then again, we buy health insurance, we buy life insurance, we buy car insurance, we buy fire insurance, we buy flood insurance, we buy all kinds of insurance. Not that we're worried something is going to happen. However, when something does happen, at least you have a mechanism to take care of it. And all I'm doing here, I speak for myself, is say, okay, it may never occur in a residential area. However, that one chance where it might, I'd like to be able to at least look at it and see if it's really feasible or allowable, and if by some reason we are superseded by state law, then we have the mechanism to give that variance so we don't have to get sued. COGA doesn't need to sue us over this, if they also agree that there's never going to be any residential driven. And if they also agree that the agreement that we have with TOP is a good one and addresses the majority of the issues, there should be no reason for them to sue us. Okay? Now, I want to thank COGA, actually. Last week, after we discussed goodwill, they actually showed their goodwill towards me by making calls and talking to constituents about how I want to ban fracking and I'm associated with this out-of-state group, et cetera, et cetera. And luckily for me, a lot of the people that they called were friends of mine that called me and told me about the discussion. And luckily for me, one of them was my wife. So I don't need your help in getting in trouble with my wife. I can do that on my own. But anyway, when those people that were called, which I'm sure was a call center, nobody that probably lived in Longmont or is employed in Longmont, and probably doesn't even know how to spell Longmont or where Longmont is spewing facts off of a pre-written statement. When they were pushed for information, facts, and figures, they weren't able to support anything that they were saying. So where's the goodwill in that? Okay? So my sentiment is I don't want to be sued by COGA. We're not doing anything that deserves for us to be sued by COGA. And as I stated last time, I, along with you, are only responsible for the decisions that we make. If COGA decides to sue us, that's a decision that they can make on their own, because I don't believe that we're doing deserves it. We've negotiated with TOP operating in good faith, and they've negotiated with us with good faith. Did we get everything we want? No. Did they get everything they want? No. But we were able to work out a compromise. And this ordinance, the way that it is right now, I believe is a good compromise that we can move forward with, and I'm all for it.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. Eugene, I got a question for you. Regarding the residential ban, what are the tangible and intangible issues with it?
Mayor and Council, tangible and intangible issues.
I like good questions.
Yeah.
No, that's how it is.
Well, let me start with this. So we've been using the metaphor of red light, yellow light, green light with council. I think that the residential ban is a yellow light issue that was defined as no appellate case law directly on point. It would certainly tee up the issue between home rule authority and statewide interest. Has not been decided on this particular issue. Certainly, traditionally, zoning has been a matter of local concern within the authority of a home rule municipality. I also think that this is an area where perhaps the law may be